Chapter 210. Sandaime looked at Dustless with a heavy expression. He never felt that the person in front of him was so far away, so untouchable. Even if the two of them were close to each other, Sandaime couldn't help but feel a sense of distance in his heart. This is not a visual gap, but a difference in the nature of the soul. At the same time, Dustless's soul returned to his body, and the Shinigami's hand was also absorbed by Dustless. What kind of freak is this guy? He actually swallowed the Shinigami. Sandaime's eyes widened as he looked at Dustless's stomach in disbelief. He just saw with his own eyes that the Shinigami was absorbed into Dustless's body. It's just a so. Dustless opened his eyes and looked at Sandaime's surprised face and said with a chuckle, "There's no need to be so surprised. I have too many abilities at the same time with the Sharingan. I have countless ways to kill the Shinigami," Wu-Chin said. Sandaime Hokage's strongest Fuinjutsu did not have any effect on him. The destruction of the Uchiha clan was actually instigated by you. Sure enough, I guessed that after Shirsue's disappearance, Uchiha's ambitious and blazing heart would calm down. Sandaime laughed bitterly, regretting that if he didn't order Itachi to slaughter the entire Uchiha clan, maybe the two sides would have reconciled. Yes, the destruction of the Uchiha clan is indeed related to me. Thinking back to the events of the past few years, Sandaime said faintly, when the Uchiha clan gathered at the Naka shrine, Uchiha Shirsue was also there, and Uchiha Fugaku also announced the declaration of capturing the Hokage of Konoha, but due to some unexpected changes, there was a small episode on the way. Dustless's eyes were cold, and his voice was gloomy as he said coldly, "Uchiha Shirsue actually used the Kodo Amatsukami on Uchiha Fugaku and permanently changed his will. I really didn't expect this." The plan couldn't keep up with the changes. Although Dustless had long expected that things wouldn't develop according to his plan, he still didn't expect Shirsue to use the Kodo Amatsukami on Uchiha Fugaku. In this aspect, he is very similar to your decisive style in handling matters. You can also be considered as his teacher. Noticing that Sandaime's vitality was fading away, Sandaime's tone was obviously a lot lower. It's a pity that the Uchiha's clan was destroyed, or he was confused because he saw the end of Konoha. So what? He wanted to use Genjutsu to change history, but he could only be ruthlessly crushed by the gears of time. Later, I decided to take his Sharingan and turn Uchiha Fugaku's will back into his former ambitious self, so they would still live in the script I designed for them. Even if it happened a few years ago, Dustless's heart was still in a daze. But that kid knew that he wasn't my opponent, so he destroyed his Manjikyu Sharingan, so I used the Izanagi to seal his eyes to help Uchiha Fugaku change it back. It took me a lot of effort. Hearing this, Sandaime looked at Dustless with a sneer, and said contemptuously, "You only have yourself to blame, you can't blame others." Sandaime didn't hesitate to attack, but he soon realized that something was wrong. If it was really as Dustless said, then why are his eyes intact now? "But I'm really sorry, I used the power of the Sharingan to control Uchiha Kagami, and used his Manjikyu Sharingan to launch the Izanagi Jutsu, but after that, I deliberately used Amaterasu to erase Shirsue in front of Itachi, so that Itachi could open the Manjikyu Sharingan. Then I invaded Uzumaki Naruto's spiritual world, released the Kyuubi seal in his body, and used the power of the Sharingan to control him. And then he released the power of the Kyuubi to destroy Konoha. Of course, the focus was on Danzo's root, which also caused Danzo to hate the Uchiha." Wu-Chin spoke with fervor and assurance. He maintained his composure from beginning to end. His deep eyes were like the bone-chilling seawater under the deep sea, filled with darkness and haze. There was no emotional fluctuation that a human should have. Combined with his cold voice, it gave people a feeling of extreme coldness. Including this Chunin exam incident, it was also planned by me. Including the Hokage's corpse in Orochimaru's hands, it was also transferred to him by me. Thinking of Orochimaru, Dustless's eyes flashed with a sneer. "What's your purpose, and what's the benefit of doing this?" Although the old voice was filled with endless anger, it also sounded decadent, vicissitudes of life and powerlessness. It was obvious that he had reached the end of his life. Even if I tell you in detail, you won't understand what my purpose is. Dustless glanced at Sandame faintly, seeing that he was about to completely disappear. He didn't answer his question, but simply turned and left. Even if he told Sandame the facts about the Jubi, he wouldn't understand. The old antiques of the previous era indulged in the illusion of peace and have completely lost their ambition. Even if Dustless told him the origin of the Jubi, Sandame may not be able to understand. Watching Dustless leave with his dirty old eyes, Sandame finally closed his eyes. The Sandame, who used to be the most powerful Hokage in the world, has completely disappeared, and his soul has returned to the sky. At the same time, in the other direction, the battle between Jiraiya and Orochimaru also began. Both of them were part of the Sannin, and their strength was equally matched, belonging to the same level, and they were also caught in a protracted battle. After Uchiha Itachi and Kisame noticed the Hachibi for the first time, they immediately came to support. Uchiha Itachi, who had the Manjikyu Sharingan, was the natural enemy of the Bijuu, and Kisame alone led the support of Konoha's ninjas, and soon tamed the Hachibi. Chapter 211. Dustless left quietly. Naturally, no one knew that he was the one behind the scenes. Of course, it doesn't rule out that some people knew, but they were killed by Dustless. Uzumaki Naruto once again used Kyuubi chakra, like a rock falling into the calm water, stirring up monstrous ripples, and even the Chunin exam stopped. The Sandame, who learned what happened, couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. At least, Uzumaki Naruto didn't hurt his own people this time. After all, the enemy Orochimaru is one of the Sannin, powerful and vicious. It's understandable that Uzumaki Naruto used Kyuubi's chakra. No one blamed Uzumaki Naruto, but they were still burned by Kyuubi's destructive power. Almost half of the Chunin exam's forest of death was wiped out. However, it didn't take long for Hinata to be killed by Gaara of the Sand-Hidden Village to ravage Konoha like a hurricane. The patriarch of the Hyuga clan, Hayashi, immediately threatened that he wouldn't give up and vowed to kill Gaara of the Sand-Hidden Village to avenge his beloved daughter. Hayashi, I know you're unwilling, but this Chunin exam is up to fate. Victory or defeat depends on oneself. I'm also very sad about Hinata's death. In the residential area of the Hyuga clan, the third Hokage looked at the furious Hyuga Hayashi with a wry smile and sighed silently. Although Hyuga Hayashi usually acts indifferent to Hinata, he actually cares about his daughter very much. It's just that he hides the fatherly love deep in his heart without leaving a trace. If it was Asuma who was killed this time, what would you do? Hayashi stared gloomily at the Sandame, suppressing the raging fire in his heart, and asked in a hoarse voice. The Sandame is the leader of Konoha. At the very least, he should respect him. If it was someone else who said that to him, Hayashi would have already killed him. The Sandame was speechless. If it was his son, Asuma, who was killed, maybe he would also go all out against the other side. Everyone knows that blood is thicker than water. Why aren't you talking? Seeing Sandame's silence, Hayashi sneered and said coldly, Gaara of the Sand-Hidden Village, does he think that I won't dare to kill him just because he is the son of the Kazekage? This time, I will teach him a lesson. Hyuga Hayashi's murderous intent was boiling, the entire hall was filled with gloomy coldness, thousands of ghosts screamed, and the invisible chill that swept through was particularly gloomy and terrifying. The Sandame frowned. He sympathized with Hyuga Hayashi, and he also saw the Hyuga clan's decades of hard work for Konoha. However, he still firmly disagreed with killing Gaara. This may directly push the Sand-Hidden Village in Konoha to the fuse of war. But Hyuga Hayashi's radical attitude clearly left no room for retreat. How troublesome. Lowering his head and thinking silently, the Sandame's eyes kept changing. Hyuga Hinata was killed because she was weak, because this Chunin exam was a disguised killing event. Gaara's ruthlessness wasn't his fault, because Konoha's ninjas in the Forest of Death also killed and robbed the opponent's scroll. This old man, my Hyuga clan has worked hard for Konoha's attack for decades in vain, but now we are not as important as a mere sand-hidden village kid. The corner of his eyes vaguely looked at the sandaime. Hayashi's face was expressionless, but his heart was cold. The Hyuga clan's contribution to Konoha was known to the world. In the 3 Shinobi World Wars, the Hyuga clan's ninjas sacrificed their lives for Konoha. But now, they are not worthy of the sand-hidden village's tailed beast. Hayashi suddenly remembered the Uchiha that had already been cooked, and he felt cold all over. Perhaps the Hyuga clan was born with evil intentions, and the Uchiha's fate was a true portrayal of them. In fact, Hayashi also knew that he was being unreasonable. The ninja exam was so cruel. He also came from the bottom. In the Chunin exam, he also killed ninjas from other villages and took their scrolls. Later, after a series of assessments, he was successfully promoted to Chunin. Hayashi was secretly testing the sandaime. He wanted to see how much weight the Hyuga clan had in this old guy's heart. After all, with the Uchiha as a precedent, it was inevitable that he would be vigilant in times of peace. The Hyuga clan's contribution to Konoha was known to all. He originally had great expectations and hopes. The Hyuga clan's loyalty to Konoha was known to the world for decades. According to his guess, the sandaime should not hesitate to agree to kill Gaara. But now it seems that he took it for granted. Sorry, Hayashi, I can't agree to your conditions. This will push the village in the direction of war. I hope you can focus on the overall situation. After pondering for a while, the sandaime said decisively. Konoha has always been the enemy of the major ninja villages. After several wars and the destruction of the Kyubi, the village's combat power recovered quickly, but it's not as good as before. If there is a war with the sand now, the best situation is for the other 3 villages to watch from the sidelines. It's not impossible for them to help the sand to swallow Konoha together. This was the case in the previous wars. In that case, I will respect the choice of the sandaime. I can rest assured that the hatred is temporary, but the Hyuga clan will never let that kid go. He took a deep look at the sandaime, and the corner of his mouth raised a self-deprecating smile. His heart was full of despair. The Hyuga clan's decades of sacrifice were not worth mentioning. If one were to compare it to the heavens, one side would be the Hyuga, and the other side would be the war. The peaceful sandaime Hokage would probably send the Hyuga clan to hell, because the current situation of Konoha simply couldn't afford a war. At the same time, Hayashi also realized the decay of Konoha, and his heart inevitably began to become active. Staying in such a village, maybe one day he will start to plan a new way for the Hyuga clan, just like the Uchiha. Chapter 212. Sandaime Hokage was silent. Looking at the expressionless Hyuga Hayashi, he could only shake his head and smile bitterly. He knew that at this moment, Hyuga Hayashi was estranged from Konoha and even hated it. My condolences, Hayashi. After that, Sandaime Hokage turned and left. His short and hunchbacked figure was even more unbearable at this moment. Perhaps he had already seen the end of Konoha. Konoha was the most prosperous ninja village, but to some extent, it was also the darkest ninja village. Perhaps it was the darkness that caused Konoha's prosperity. People are emotional creatures. In the face of an unprecedented situation, it's inevitable that they would overthink. At this moment, Hyuga Hayashi's mind began to become active. Konoha is not a place where my clan can live for a long time. Closing his eyes in despair, Hyuga Hayashi's heart had already given up on Konoha. When he opened his eyes again, his whole person was extremely awe-inspiring. The death of Hinata didn't shock her father the most. The one who reacted the most intensely was undoubtedly Uzumaki Naruto. However, in the face of power, Uzumaki Naruto's unhappiness was quickly suppressed. As Hinata's father, Hyuga Hayashi couldn't do anything, let alone Uzumaki Naruto, who had no right to speak. Uzumaki Naruto could only secretly swear that he would teach Gaara a lesson. Among them, Uchiha Sasuke was the most unbalanced. Uzumaki Naruto, who he looked down on the most, showed a strength that could destroy the world. He could even fight and even suppress a strong person like Orochimaru. This scene was deeply imprinted in his heart. The words that Orochimaru said to him before he left also lingered in Sasuke's heart. He could also feel the power of the curse of heaven given to him by Orochimaru. Sasuke's heart was also shaken. Indeed, as Orochimaru said, Konoha was in a peaceful world, and he couldn't obtain powerful strength. During this period, Sasuke also learned Chidori from Kakashi. Naruto also practiced with Jiraiya, one of the Sannin, for a while. His strength was also increasing rapidly. All in all, the Chunin exam was stirred up by Dustless, and the situation suddenly went downhill sharply. It was different from the previous Chunin exam. Sandaime Hokage could only secretly hate Orochimaru. If Orochimaru didn't cause trouble, the situation wouldn't be so bad. Despite this, the Chunin exam will continue. All the ninjas who survived in the Forest of Death will advance to the next exam, which will be the third exam. At that time, the third Hokage and the fourth Kazekage will personally watch. Naruto's, Hyuga, Hinata's brother, Hyuga. Shinobi, Hyuga Hinata's brother Hyuga Niji. Naruto Shikamaru also lost to Temari because of chakra. Kankuro deliberately abstained to preserve his strength. Now, this is the final match of the Chunin exam, Uchiha Sasuke vs Gaara of the Sand Village. This is really the last match to watch. Hokage-sama. On a tall building in the distance, Sandaime Hokage and 4th Kazekage could be seen overlooking the competition below. 4th Kazekage turned his head and said to Sandaime Hokage. Yondaime Kazekage's face was covered, and it was impossible to see his face clearly. His whole body gave people a cold feeling, especially his eyes, which were particularly strange. Indeed, it's a battle between geniuses. Sandaime Hokage nodded, and at the same time, he carefully looked at 4th Kazekage from the corner of his eyes. He didn't know why, but he always felt a sense of oppression, as if he was being stared at by a beast, making him uncomfortable. Old man, today is the day you die. With a ferocious smile, 4th Kazekage secretly thought. In fact, the current 4th Kazekage was assassinated by Orochimaru a few days ago. The current Kazekage was just Orochimaru's disguise. Orochimaru's hatred towards Sandaime Hokage was understandable. Originally, this old guy always thought that the position under Sandaime Hokage's was his, but Namikaze Minato beat him to it. The relationship between the master and apprentice was inevitably estranged, and later, his human experiment plan was discovered, and he finally embarked on the road of defection. While Orochimaru was planning how to destroy Sandaime Hokage, he didn't know that there were 3 figures watching the battle in the dark. Oh, you two are in a good mood, coming to watch children fight. Under the cool shade of the tree, 3 figures were clearly visible, wearing black trench coats embroidered with red clouds, wearing ninja headbands with a mark on their heads, and dressed strangely. Leader asked me and Itachi to come to Konoha to investigate, to prepare for the capture of Kyuubi and Ichibi in the future. The shark-faced man looked at Dustless, and Kisame said bluntly. He didn't expect Dustless to be in Konoha's ninja village, and he and Itachi didn't hide their mission. Of course, it's also good to have a chance to kill Orochimaru. Kisame sneered at Orochimaru, who pretended to be 4th Kazekage. When he ambushed 4th Kazekage, Zetsu and Dustless were there, and naturally knew his plan. I'm curious what you're doing here. Itachi glanced at Dustless faintly, and his eyes fell on Uchiha Sasuke. His eyes flashed with a faint luster, and he seemed surprised by his current strength. Me. Of course, I'm taking back the things I gave to Orochimaru. I lent them to him for so long, and it's time to take them back. Looking at Orochimaru in the distance, Dustless's tone was slightly strange. Dustless's inexplicable words suddenly attracted Itachi and Kisame's attention, and they couldn't understand what he meant. They just looked indifferently at the battlefield in the distance. After all, it's a duel between a genius and a Jinchuriki, and it's also a good show that can't be missed. Orochimaru, you'd better hand over the corpses of the Hokage after this, otherwise, humph. With a cold snort, the killing intent in his eyes disappeared. Dustless also retracted his gaze and stared at the battle in the distance with interest. Chapter 213. The majestic and infinite perception spread out. Dustless could clearly perceive that outside Konoha's ninja village, there were many sand ninja and Otogakure ninja led by Orochimaru lurking in the dark, waiting for the opportunity. Worthy of being the younger brother of Itachi and Dustless. He's not bad at all against the sand village's Jinchuriki, and he even has the upper hand. Kisame's pupils dilated as he looked at Uchiha Sasuke in surprise. He couldn't help but sigh. Uchiha Fugaku and Uchiha Mikoto's powerful genes. Dustless and Itachi's strength is known all over the world. Now, this young brother is also showing his edge. These three brothers will probably stand at the top of the pyramid in the future. Sasuke has a good sensei, and he also has a heart that knows how to improve. Thanks to you, Itachi. Looking at Uchiha Itachi with a smile, Dustless said sarcastically. His tone gave people a feeling of gloating, as if he was happy that Uchiha Sasuke was so crazy. Dustless's gloating look made Kisame next to him shudder unconsciously. It seems that there is indeed some problem with the genes of this family, Kisame secretly muttered. The strength of these three brothers is beyond doubt. Uchiha Sasuke's potential is also not small. He may not be as good as Dustless and Itachi now, but he will definitely be in the future. However, the temperament of the three brothers is completely opposite. Dustless gives people the strangest feeling. He does almost everything according to his heart, and he is not bound. It seems that he just wants to have fun. No one knows what his purpose is. Uchiha Itachi gave people the impression that he was thoughtful and gentle. In fact, he was a person who was cold on the outside but warm on the inside. As for Uchiha Sasuke, he was too obvious. He was arrogant and conceited, but at the same time, he did things flawlessly. He could observe the details that ordinary people ignored. Weird family. Kisame shook his head. He really didn't know that the personalities of the three brothers were so different. Thanks to me. That is indeed the case. Uchiha Itachi didn't deny it and nodded thoughtfully. Sasuke's current appearance was indeed caused by him, and then he looked at Dustless. So-called brothers are just accessories for each other. Isn't that what you said before? Dustless curled his lips when he heard this. He knew what Uchiha Itachi was thinking, and he was too lazy to talk nonsense. After all, no one can stop him if he is willing to be a part of Uchiha Sasuke. Kisame was confused. He didn't know what Itachi meant by accessories, and he didn't want to talk about it. For him, watching the fight in front of him was more interesting. Bang! In the middle of the arena, Gaara was punched by Uchiha Sasuke. His body flew out like a broken kite. He was so weak that he slammed into the wall, causing many cracks. Uchiha Sasuke's speed was extremely fast. He once used Sharingan to copy Liluaku's taijutsu and trained it himself. His speed was no worse than Liluaku's, a taijutsu expert. Gaara's-san couldn't react at all. His speed was not proportional to Uchiha Sasuke's. Under absolute speed, he could only passively take a beating. What an amazing boy. I must get you and then take revenge on that man. Orochimaru, who was disguised as the fourth Kazekage, looked down at Sasuke, who almost beat Gaara without any power to fight back. The more he looked, the more satisfied he was. Being killed by your own brother, This way of death is very suitable for you, Itachi. Orochimaru secretly thought with a strange and gloomy smile on his face. It seemed that he was attracted by the invisible evil aura emanating from Orochimaru, and the third Hokage's gaze was also cast over. Is it my illusion? The third Hokage frowned deeply, and the Techuan character on his forehead was clearly visible. This evil feeling made him feel a sense of déjà vu. Damn guy. Gaara slowly stood up and stared at Uchiha Sasuke ferociously. He was like a dying beast, and hysterically said with hatred, "Killing a guy like you should make my presence known." After that, the sand layers around Gaara began to converge, forming a giant sphere that tightly protected him. There was also an eye of the sand floating in the sky, obviously used for reconnaissance. Whoosh! A sharp sound rang, and a hazy black shadow whizzed out like a rushing lightning. In just an instant, it rushed to the front of the sphere and punched with all its strength. Boom! The round high-density sand sphere trembled fiercely, splashing some dust, and then some red blood flowed out from the surface. Damn, it's so hard. He quickly pulled back a distance. If he didn't destroy this thick tortoise shell, he wouldn't be able to touch Gaara. Uchiha Sasuke's heart sank slightly. His arm was numb from the shock, and the blood stains just now were also left by him. Gaara, who was now in absolute defense, was almost invincible to Uchiha Sasuke. It seems that I can only use that. His hesitation was quickly replaced by determination. The light in Uchiha Sasuke's eyes disappeared in a flash, and a dazzling light of thunder appeared in his hand. An ear-piercing roar resounded continuously, as if thousands of birds were chirping at the same time. The sharp sound resounded through the sky, making people's scalp numb. Looking at it, Uchiha Sasuke's hand was wrapped in a silver light, and the terrifying power of the thorns on it was even more chilling. It seemed that it could penetrate everything. Silver substantialized chakra. Sure enough, it's Chidori. Dustless didn't have the slightest surprise. The creator of this technique was Kakashi, but it was Uchiha Sasuke who really exerted it to the limit. Under the surprised gaze of countless people, Uchiha Sasuke and Chidori in his hand rushed toward Gaara at full speed. Chapter 2:14. The conditions for learning Chidori are extremely harsh, and the physical requirements have reached the limit. It's undoubtedly Chidori, but it should be Kakashi's jutsu. I didn't expect him to teach it to Sasuke. It seems that their relationship is not a simple mentor relationship. Uchiha Itachi, who remained calm from beginning to end, said with a little surprise. For a ninja like Kakashi, who has no Kekkei Genkai, the rare and precious jutsu, Chidori, can be left for future generations, and there's no need to give it to an outsider like Sasuke. It's not difficult to see that Uchiha Sasuke and Kakashi are still very compatible, and their relationship is quite good. Uchiha Itachi's fluctuating heart also relaxed. Konoha is surrounded by strong enemies, and with Kakashi's support, Uchiha Sasuke can be regarded as a safety guarantee. The harsh roar resounded through the sky, and the sharp screams made the tens of thousands of spectators who watched the Chunin exam tremble. Their hearts were abnormally throbbing as they looked at the substantialized chakra in Uchiha Sasuke's assistant's heart. Even if there are many ordinary civilians among them, they can also feel the tense atmosphere at the scene. The onlookers took a deep breath and looked at Uchiha Sasuke with rapt attention. Or rather, they looked at the lightning in his hand that pulled a long and narrow crack on the ground. They couldn't help but sweat for Gaara in absolute defense. The dazzling lightning contained a sharpness that penetrated everything, and everyone could feel it. Whoosh! In the blink of an eye, Uchiha Sasuke burst out like a berserk beast. His speed was extremely fast, and his whole person was like a flash bathed in lightning, extremely dazzling. He almost instantly came to Gaara's side. Whoosh! 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 Gaara's exposed sand eye obviously detected Uchiha Sasuke, and countless sand spikes immediately extended from the sand sphere that wrapped him, stabbing at Uchiha Sasuke, trying to prevent him from touching him. Insignificant skill, I will defeat you today. Easily avoiding the spikes, Uchiha Sasuke sneered again and again, his expression wild and proud. In his opinion, the reason why Gaara stopped him from approaching him was a sign of fear. An unruly expression appeared on his young face. The silver light in his hand was like an electromagnetic field, gathering a large amount of thunder and lightning. Crackling sounds could be heard as the silver light pierced toward the round sand ball without hesitation. Pucci, the sharp lightning immediately pierced through it, splashing countless gravel, and a lot of soil fell to the ground. This is lightning. Inside the absolute defense, Gaara looked at the subtle silver luster, and an unprecedented sense of danger arose spontaneously. His eyes flashed with a rare color of fear. Gazing at the oncoming Chidori, Gaara was enveloped by the scattered lightning, causing his skin to ache. He could feel the danger and extraordinariness of the lightning. I have to dodge. At the critical moment, Gaara instinctively avoided Chidori's attack and avoided the most important chest position, which was why he survived. Pucci. In the dark space inside the absolute defense, a dazzling blood flower suddenly appeared in midair, and a violent tingling sensation suddenly spread all over his body. Gaara was stunned at first, and then he stared blankly at his pierced shoulder. Wiping the bloody wound, this seems to be the first time in his life that Gaara was beaten like this. Damn it, did he dodge it? Seeing that his attack didn't kill Gaara, Uchiha Sasuke cursed and immediately retreated. Chidori is a very powerful ninjutsu, but it requires a huge amount of chakra to maintain. He is still young and doesn't have so much chakra, and he has enough energy for him to squander. It actually hurt that Jinchuriki, but fortunately, he didn't kill him. If he died, we would be in trouble. Kisame immediately saw Gaara's shoulder pierced by Chidori. Although it was a pity, he was relieved. If Jinchuriki died, Akatsuki would also be very troubled. No matter what, he is still our brother. Naturally, he can't be that bad. Looking faintly at the bloody Gaara, Dustless said calmly. At the same time, he looked at Orochimaru and frowned. The more powerful Uchiha Sasuke is, the more Orochimaru will yearn for Sharingan and Uchiha Sasuke's body. Sasuke also chases after power, and Orochimaru can make him stronger. The two of them are naturally dry wood meeting fire. Uchiha Sasuke's defection can't be stopped. His character determines everything. Even if Orochimaru is the incarnation of the devil, Uchiha Sasuke, who pursues absolute power, will choose to collude with Orochimaru. A woo! The sound of the beast's roar resounded through the sky, and a strong murderous aura and disaster descended. The hysterical roar made Uchiha Sasuke's soul tremble. Staring at Gaara with saliva in the corner of his mouth, he subconsciously took a step back. There's something wrong with this chakra. Although it's still in his body, it's completely different from before. It's similar to Naruto that day, but it's not as evil as Naruto's chakra. Holding the dagger and looking at Gaara cautiously, Uchiha Sasuke secretly thought. He couldn't help but think of Uzumaki Naruto's violent suppression of Orochimaru a few days ago. The chakra in front of him is similar to Naruto's a few days ago. Even if it's not as dense as Uzumaki Naruto, it can still crush Uchiha Sasuke. It seems that there's something terrible in their bodies. Gaara's eyes were bloodshot and messy like a spider web. There was some saliva in the corner of his mouth, and his eyeballs bulged out horribly as if they were about to fall out. It was particularly terrifying. Good opportunity. Sasuke's pupils suddenly shrank. With his Sharingan, Uchiha Sasuke's insight was naturally powerful. Just now, he easily captured the weakness of Gaara's inner body due to excessive anger. Chapter 2:15. The Sharingan's ability to capture movement is extremely strong. If the Byakugan is an eye born for detection, then the Sharingan is an evil eye born for killing. Even the slightest loophole cannot escape from the Sharingan. Gaara, who was in a berserk state, was full of loopholes under Sharingan's observation. Whoosh! The sound of breaking air came, and a black hazy shadow rushed straight. The sharp cold light was obvious. It was Uchiha Sasuke with a cold face using his speed above Gaara. Little did he know that Gaara had already expected this result, and a cold smile appeared on his face. There should be a limit to your ignorance. No matter what, Gaara is still a Jinchuriki of Ichibi. Even if he is the weakest of the Bijou, his strength is not something a little brat like you can handle. Sitting side by side with the Sandaime, the fourth Kazekage, Orochimaru, shook his head secretly. Uchiha Sasuke's talent and effort are indisputable, but he is too arrogant and conceited. Even if Ichibi's Jinchuriki is weak, he is still a Jinchuriki. Whoosh! The cold light came head-on, like an arrow, whistling straight toward Gaara. It looked like it was going to pierce his head. Ah! The roar of the beast came out of Gaara's throat again. The hoarse roar carried endless impact, and the spreading wave directly shook the oncoming dagger away. What a powerful force! Uchiha Sasuke's pupils suddenly shrank, and the impact of Shikaku's killing intent passed through him. His forehead was covered with cold sweat. Staring at Gaara, Uchiha Sasuke's throat choked uncontrollably, and the cold murderous aura around him made his body tremble. It was a fear that came from the depths of his fate. That kid can still feel fear. It seems that the game is over. With a smile on his face, Sandaime Hokage's face was full of enjoyment, and then he looked at the fearful Uchiha Sasuke, as if he saw something incredible, and his old eyes were full of surprise. It's not a bad thing to let this fearless kid eat bones, the dry and white lips grinned, and the Sandaime secretly calculated. After all, Uchiha Sasuke has been smooth since he became a ninja. Compared to Uzumaki Naruto, his strength has improved rapidly under the influence of hatred. Hokage-sama. You don't have time to worry about others now. It's better to look at your current situation. As soon as the hoarse voice with killing intent fell, a dark dagger was placed on the Sandaime's throat, and the Sandaime's neck was bound. The one who attacked the Sandaime Hokage was Orochimaru, disguised as the Sandaime Kazekage. At the same time, countless feather-like objects fell from the void. The audience watching the Chunin exam fainted, including Uzumaki Naruto and Nara Shikamaru, who had poor resistance to Genjutsu. In the periphery of Konoha's ninja village, the lurking Otogakure and Sand Ninja took the opportunity to use summoning jutsu to summon a lot of thick snakes to attack Konoha. Kazekage-sama, you should understand what this means. Triggering a war between the two sides won't do any good to the Sand village. This old man advises you to stop, otherwise, you will have to bear the consequences. The Sandaime glanced at the fourth Kazekage behind him, and said in a deep voice. If I can destroy Konoha, I don't care if there is a war, not to mention this has nothing to do with me. It's been so long, have you forgotten what I said to you, Sarutobi-sensei? Yondaime Kazekage's voice suddenly changed, as if his throat was blocked, his voice became extremely hoarse, and his tone was like a poisonous snake, full of coldness. Sure enough, it's you, Orochimaru. His body suddenly aged a few decades, and the third Hokage smiled self-deprecatingly. It can be said that Konoha's prosperity was in the hands of Orochimaru, and at the same time, its destruction was also in his hands. I once told you that you should determine the fifth Hokage as soon as possible, but now it seems to be too late. Orochimaru licked the sharp dagger in his hand, and the cold light on it became clearer, and the refracted light seemed to be able to pierce the eyes of human beings. Too late. Who told you that? With a sneer, the third Hokage's pupils emitted a cold killing intent, and chakra burst out of his body, and he said with hatred, it's not too late to kill you. Today, even if the third Hokage was pedantic and ignorant, he knew that this once most trusted disciple must be eradicated, and it must be done by him. Konoha's situation at the moment was also a mess. Giant snakes constantly broke through the defense and penetrated into the interior of Konoha, and the situation was almost one-sided. When Gaara in the center of the field was about to completely kill Uchiha Sasuke, his head suddenly became dizzy, and his body was uncontrollably shaking. Good opportunity. Uchiha Sasuke saw this and suddenly rushed forward, intending to completely kill Gaara, but a tall shadow suddenly rushed in front of Gaara and easily kicked Uchiha Sasuke away. It was the Sand Village's Jonin Maki and Gaara's brother and sister. As the referee of the examination room, Genma also immediately stood in front of Sasuke, secretly observing the surrounding environment. Obviously, this so-called Chunin exam has been replaced by actual combat. It seems that your Sand Village has been plotting for a long time. This will trigger a war between the two villages. Genma, who stood in front of Uchiha Sasuke, asked angrily. Konoha was caught off guard, and without thinking, they knew that the loss must be great. Take Gaara away, he is the village's precious fighting force. Maki ignored omniscient fire Genma and ordered Temari and Kankuro. The two looked at each other and tactfully took Gaara away from this troublesome place. Chapter 216. Time flew by like an arrow, and a few days passed by in the blink of an eye. After a series of difficult persuasion from Jiraiya and Uzumaki Naruto, Tsunade's group was finally appointed as the fifth Hokage. Later, Uchiha Sasuke realized that his strength was not as good as Uzumaki Naruto, and he was jealous. If he continued to be free, he would have no hope of revenge in his life. Finally, he remembered the curse seal power left in his body by Orochimaru and resolutely chose to go on the road of betrayal. During this period, Konoha's ninja sent Uzumaki Naruto and others to chase Uchiha Sasuke. However, they were blocked by Otogekure. Only Uzumaki Naruto barely caught up with Uchiha Sasuke. The two launched an unprecedented battle in the Valley of the End, but it ended with Uchiha Sasuke's victory. It announced the failure of Konoha's plan. Uzumaki Naruto, who was in pain, realized that the gap between him and Uchiha Sasuke was still big. He made up his mind to train hard with Jiraiya for 2 years. After learning about Jiraiya and Uzumaki Naruto, Dustless of the rain-hidden village breathed a sigh of relief. The rock that had been in his heart was finally settled. He just had to wait quietly for everything to start 2 years later. But obviously, some people didn't want Dustless to live so leisurely. I didn't expect that you two could go together. Speechlessly looking at the two stunning beauties who were chatting happily, Wu Qin had a headache. He never thought that these two people who had nothing to do with each other could come together. It seemed that they were familiar with each other and had a heart-to-heart talk. Did you two take the wrong script? The beauties were Konan and Otsutsuki Higuro. During the time when Dustless was away, the two women were very close to each other. Compared with Dustless, who had been teammates for many years, Konan's relationship with Otsutsuki Higuro was more harmonious and appropriate. Pain has a task for us. Seeing that Dustless had arrived, Xiao Nan's expression immediately changed. Her beautiful face once again returned to its indifferent expression. She chose to frown at him coldly. Her small face turned into an unapproachable expression. Seeing that Dustless seemed to have seen an enemy, he was immediately petrified. Otsutsuki Hagoromo also left. After all, she was not a member of the Akatsuki organization, and she was too lazy to participate in those bloody and boring things. It would be more comfortable to communicate with Hinata or guide Honrin. Mission. Looking at Xiao Nan suspiciously, Dustless couldn't help but frown. There shouldn't be any missions during this period of time, especially a mission that Xiao Nan personally came to find him for. The Akatsuki naturally accepts missions from the outside world. Ordinary missions can be handed over to the ordinary ninjas of the Rain Village. As for some S-level missions, even super S-level missions can only be handed over to us. Konan said indifferently. This is interesting. There is actually a mission that can use both of us. I'm curious about the origin of the other party, Dustless nodded. The most powerful member of the Akatsuki organization was the Oracle combination formed by him and Conan. The mission that can use both of them is definitely a Super S-level mission. In the dim candlelight room, a ghost-like figure with orange hair could be vaguely seen. Even if it stood up, there were no signs of life. It was no different from a puppet. There were a number of dense black iron rods inserted all over the body. It looked scary, adding a lot of gloominess and strangeness. It was Pain, and the two figures standing beside him were naturally Conan and Dustless. The construction of the Rain Village cost a lot of money. The money saved in the organization is all used to buy various materials and necessary living materials. Now there is a hole in the capital flow, and a lot of money is needed to fill it. Pain said coldly. Due to the previous Second Shinobi World War, the Rain Village has been shattered and disintegrated. As the center of the war between the three major countries, the Rain Village is almost in a miserable state of anarchy, allowing the ninjas of other major countries to wreak havoc. In other words, staring at Dustless and Conan, Pain said faintly, the organization has no money, and needs you to perform tasks to earn money. Hearing this, Dustless smiled bitterly. Apart from the missions that they had to do, most of the rest of the time, they were working to earn extra money. What is the mission this time? Shaking his head, Dustless was too lazy to talk nonsense. Remembering Conan's cautiousness when she looked for him, Dustless asked with interest. This mission was obviously unusual. Yomi of the Land of Demons is trying to unlock the seal of Morio, and your two missions are to kill him. His eyes looked indifferently at the void in front of him, Pain said indifferently. His tone was simple and concise. The meaning revealed was that Yomi was no different from a worm, and it was not worth him saying more. As for Morio, Pain's tone was silent. In fact, he had never seen Morio himself, but there were rumors that this prehistoric monster almost destroyed the world in the past. Be careful as much as possible, that Morio is not an ordinary thing. Staring at Conan, Pain said seriously. As for Dustless, he directly ignored him. In his opinion, this kid has a lot of means to escape, especially that exaggerated speed. Worrying about him is better than worrying about whether the Land of Demons has the ability to pay the funds after the completion of the mission. Isn't Morio resurrected 2 years later? Doubts emerged in his heart. Dustless was speechless. He didn't expect that the wind from his butterfly wings was so big that even Morio, a prehistoric monster, came out of the cage 2 years in advance. Since the risk is so great, then why don't we give up this mission? Conan frowned. Although the Akatsuki are desperate, this kind of mission is too dangerous and can be completely rejected. For world peace, we must organize Morio and Yomi. Glancing faintly, Pain's tone was resolute. If Morio is resurrected, the whole world will be unlucky, and the Akatsuki will also be unlucky. You are really great. The corner of his mouth twitched without a trace. Dustless's heart was filled with hundreds of thousands of grass mud horses, and he understood a little more about Uzumaki Nagato's heart. Chapter 217. Pain looked at Dustless calmly, not worried at all about whether Dustless could complete the task. If possible, he really wanted Dustless to die. Dustless gave Pain a very strange feeling. If it was purely strength, it would be fine. The most concerning thing was that this guy's motives and purpose were unknown. He was like a hidden explosive. Even if the masked man sent him, he was still on guard because no one knew when Dustless, this deadly explosive, would explode. This task must be completed. Seeing that the corner of Dustless's mouth was wriggling with a sign of ridicule, Pain immediately gave a death order, not giving Dustless a chance to speak at all. One more thing, if possible, capture the Witch of the Land of Demons. Luin Hui's eyes surged with ferocious light and naked hostility. Pain's sudden order made Xiao Nan and Wu Qin stunned. They looked at each other and could see the surprise in each other's eyes. It turns out that he may value the witch's ability to see through life and death and predict the future. After a moment, Dustless's eyes flashed with understanding. The ability to predict the life and death of others was indeed good. It was normal for Pain to be tempted. Even if he didn't care about his own life and death, he still cared about his close friend Conan very much. He could use Cheyenne ability to predict the future and eliminate future dangers for Conan in advance. It could be said that he gave a lot of thought. She's a poor person. For the sake of you being used by me for so many years, I will save her life in the future. Looking at the cold Pain with pity, Dustless secretly decided in his heart. It was not difficult to see that Uzumaki Nagato still cared about Conan's life very much, even more than his own life. On the surface, he was indifferent, but in fact, he valued friendship very much. Conan naturally didn't understand why Pain wanted to capture the witch of the land of demons, Cheyenne, but out of trust in Pain, she nodded obediently. She would choose to obey any order made by Uzumaki Nagato unconditionally. Remember to be safe, Conan. It seemed that the enemy this time was different from the past. Pain's isolated voice was a little vivid, giving people a little more warmth. Xiao Nan nodded lightly, and then she turned around and left with Dustless, vanishing into the darkness. Since ancient times, the country of ghosts had always been a mysterious place. This country was passed down from generation to generation by witches who could seal the so-called demonic creatures. They had some kind of unimaginable ability. Looks like this time, it's much more dangerous than any of the previous characters. In the dense forest, two black shadows appeared and disappeared, whistling straight ahead. Their fleeting figures were the epitome of the word speed. Wangliang is a demonic creature from ancient times. Since it can destroy the world, its strength should be about the same, Dustless said calmly as his gaze fell on Xiao Nan. Although there was very little information about the so-called Wangliang, at least one thing was certain. The Wangliang was an ultimate monster that had lived for many years, so its strength was naturally not weak. However, it's really strange that those guys from the country of demons would hire Akatsuki. On the contrary, they didn't use the 5 major countries. Shaking his head, Dustless had doubts in his heart. An unprecedented dark cloud shrouded his heart. Today's Akatsuki had a good reputation, but compared to the ninja village of the 5 major countries, whether it was strength or heritage, it was a lot worse. In particular, Konoha village of the 5 major countries and the country of demons had a good relationship for generations. Instead of looking for Konoha's ninja village, they looked for a group of rebellious ninjas. Their motive was really suspicious. Strange, why do I have this feeling? His eyes slightly wrinkled, Dustless's face became gloomy, and his gaze was enough to penetrate the void. His mood was particularly irritable. He always had a feeling that he was being calculated. This feeling that he had never had before made him uncomfortable, and his heart began to shake. Is there something wrong? Noticing the sudden change in Dustless's mood, Conan asked doubtfully. Dustless was the kind of person who rarely showed himself, let alone showing the most direct irritable expression. He usually gave people a pleasant feeling. Caw. Just as Conan's thoughts were spinning, thinking about the reason for Dustless's anger, the ground suddenly burst open, and countless thick and condensed earth spikes rose from the ground. We haven't even reached the border of the country of demons and someone is already ambushing us. It seems that old bastard Yomi has spent a lot of painstaking effort. Dustless's pupils suddenly narrowed, and staring at the earth spikes from the ground, he secretly thought. The current journey to the country of demons was still a lot of distance away, and someone had already stopped them, so it was not difficult to guess how many Yama's imps would be waiting for them in the country of demons. Looking at the spikes from the ground without fear, Conan's body was already covered with countless explosive tags. Boom boom boom, the explosive tags floating in the sky suddenly burst open, and the blazing flames blew the spikes from the ground into pieces, and in an instant the intensive attack was disintegrated. It seems these two people are extremely powerful. The people of Akatsuki organization are really monsters with strength, and that man who has an arrogant look on his face and hasn't made a move is even more unfathomable. The group of 4 secretly observed the situation from afar. Seeing their carefully arranged sneak attack was dismembered in an instant, the heart of all 4 of them was particularly heavy. The man who has an arrogant look on his face and hasn't made a move was naturally dustless. Leave it to me, I want to see what ability that man has. Another person of the group of 4 opened her mouth and said. Her voice was cold, obviously belonged to a woman, and faintly there was disdain in her voice. She didn't believe that these 2 people before her eyes were so strong, especially opposite party had actually sent 2 people. This was really the best provocation and disdain. Want to see what ability I have? Then I will fulfill your wish. An ice-cold voice came from behind the group of 4, followed by an intense killing intent coming from behind. The boiling killing intent made their soul boil, and it was abnormally difficult to breathe, and they were filled with suffocating feeling. What came into view was the indifferent face of Dustless, who had an arrogant look on his face. Chapter 2:18. The group of men and women turned their heads to look at Dustless. Their faces were full of horror, and they unconsciously gasped for breath, but the air around them was flowing straight, and there was only endless coldness and direct killing intent. One after another, they stared at Wu Qin, whose pupils were emitting dim light in horror. Their throats twitched unconsciously, and the invisible sense of oppression almost made them collapse mentally. Perhaps the thin man in front of them only needed to exert a little force to kill them. When did this guy? How can a normal human have this kind of high-level ninjutsu to hide his aura? The handsome man, who was obviously the leader of the group of 4, said incredulously. He looked at the expressionless Wu Qin in astonishment. His face was lifeless. You are the subordinates of Yomi. The evil chakra in your body was also given to you by him. Staring at the group of 4 in front of him, Dustless suppressed his voice and asked, and his tone was full of killing intent. Dustless could clearly feel the evil chakra in the group of 4 in front of him, and the negative emotions of hatred were hidden under their skin. You dare to ambush me, but you have to pay a price for everything. The 4 people in front of him were all loyal subordinates of Yomi. As long as one of them was left alive, he could use the eye power of Rinnegan to extract their memory. The vast chakra surged out of his body, and Dustless suddenly burst out and rushed straight toward the group of 4. Earth release, earth flow wall. The burly man saw that Dustless disappeared, and he couldn't perceive his movements, so he simply cast a perfect defensive rock wall in the 360-degree range of the 4 to resist Dustless's attack. Child's play. Dustless sneered at the semicircular rock wall defense, and suddenly a golden light flashed from his palm, and the light gathered at the tip of his fingers shot out and rushed straight toward the group of 4. Boom! A hole was suddenly blasted in the solid rock wall, and the sun shone in. Before the burly man could react, a dark shadow covered the sky, and he looked up and saw Dustless with a cold face. The straight blade light directly burned his eyes. Poochie! The golden light swept across, and the enchanting snowflakes sprinkled all over the void, splashing all over the ground. The strong smell of blood filled the narrow area. Wu Qin casually cut the burly man in half, and immediately whistled out like lightning, galloping towards the other 2 figures. Poochie! Poochie! The other 2 were also ruthlessly penetrated by the golden light, and their bodies were divided into 2 parts. Their fate was tragic, and their eyes were still open in horror. Obviously they were killed by surprise, and they didn't even have time to realize that they were ruthlessly erased. Now you are left. Kusanagi sword flashed with a faint light, lost its texture, and slowly disappeared. His left eye also turned into Rinsei Sharingan, and he sneered at the last person of the group of 4, and instantly appeared beside him as if he was traveling through space. His hand tightly pressed on his head, and used the ability of Rinsei Sharingan to read the memory in his body. It seems that Yomi and Morio have merged into one. That old man is quite bold. After carefully reading his memory, Dustless's voice rose a lot, and he couldn't help but sweat for Yomi's madness. Morio was the typical type of monster that ate people without spitting out the bones, but that old man didn't hesitate to let Morio enter his body. This kind of courage to face death, Dustless really admired. Boom! After reading the memory of Yomi's subordinate, Dustless threw him aside, and let him fend for himself. There was no need to waste time on such a small pawn. In the blink of an eye, he caught up with Conan. Be careful, Yomi has merged with Morio, and can control a large number of ghost army. The strength of a large number of terracotta soldiers may not be enough to pay attention to, but the number is very amazing. Dustless, who was beside Conan, said seriously and cautiously, those large number of undead army should not be underestimated. In such a short time, you have inquired about such important information. Conan looked at Dustless in surprise. One must know that he had left for less than 10 minutes, and unexpectedly he had inquired about the enemy's information in such detail. Perhaps even the Akatsuki organization's best at inquiring about information couldn't do it. Just a small trick. Dustless smiled indifferently. The ability of Rinsei's Sharingan was indeed very convenient. It could extract the memory of the other party, and there was no way to hide the information. First use that witch called Cheyenne to seal Morio again, and then we will kidnap him. After a little calculation in his heart, Dustless suddenly decided. Morio seemed to be the incarnation of evil. So far there was no way to directly kill him, so only a powerful sealing technique could be used to seal him. That's the best. Conan nodded. Her beautiful eyes turned around Dustless, and from time to time a complex color flashed in her eyes, which was a great contrast to her usual cold and aloof snow lotus. Unfortunately, Dustless didn't notice this scene. Soon, the sky turned gloomy. The howling cold wind wreaked havoc on the earth. The pitch-black night sky dyed everything in the world a rich black color. Dustless and Conan also arrived at the destination in time. Fortunately, we didn't come late, otherwise, that witch would thank us for freeing her. The densely packed terracotta soldiers were rushing towards the palace of the country of ghosts. The guards who came to stop them were killed until their blood flowed like a river. Looking around, the entire palace was filled with the corpses of the dead. In the face of these thick-skinned terracotta soldiers, they could only passively take a beating. Conan. Staring at the undead army in front of him, Dustless's pupils slightly narrowed, and the light emitted from his eyes was extremely dangerous, and his strong and powerful arm grabbed Conan's soft hand. An electric shock like numbness suddenly spread all over her body, and her face was filled with panic. When she was about to shake off Dustless, a golden halo covered both of them. Kensusanu. Chapter 219. The golden chakra wrapped Dustless and Conan tightly like an iron bucket. Facing the densely packed undead army in front of them, they went straight ahead. In the dark night sky, only the golden light beam could be seen, and with its powerful brute force, it went through the undead army and landed at the gate of the palace of the land of demons, creating a long and narrow crack on the ground. Along the way, the undead terracotta soldiers that came in contact with Kensusanu exploded as if they met their natural enemy, and they were easily crushed into pieces. Is it the Akatsuki of the Rain Village? Leave it to us, Miko-sama is in the palace. A group of guards rushed over, and after seeing Dustless and Conan's red cloud cloak, they were relieved, and at the same time, they were lined up side by side with bows and arrows. Apparently, they were going to fight this group of undead army. Your courage is really commendable, but fighting with this group of statues is really stupid. Feeling the determination of these guards, Dustless was deeply moved, and immediately went to the front. The boiling hot chakra began to erupt. Let me give you a hand. His cold eyes swept through the dense undead army. Dustless's body tightened, and the hot chakra continued to erupt. Looking at Conan beside him, he secretly smacked his lips. Uchiha flame formation. The crimson boundary of fire gushed out from the depths of the ground. It covered a wide range and was as powerful as an insurmountable moat. It blocked the undead army and burned all the puppets that tried to break the boundary. So powerful. Is this a ninja? Sure enough, we ancient samurai can't compare with them. Nonsense, I heard that they spent a lot of money to hire ninjas. They are definitely stronger than us. The undead army that was previously killing them was stopped, and the samurai who were at death's door instantly cheered, and all of them roared to the sky, venting their inner joy. Just as he was about to thank Dushless, he and Xiao Nan had already disappeared. Brat, don't waste our time. Hurry up and come out. Don't think that I won't beat you up just because you're a witch. In the empty hall, Dushless and Xiao Nan stared at the young girl behind the gauze curtain with furrowed brows. This little girl clearly treated Dushless and Xiao Nan as if they were invisible. Dushless immediately threatened her. There was no doubt that this girl was the witch Siyuan. Don't be so rude. Looking at Dustless with dissatisfaction, Xiao Nan frowned and said unhappily. Dustless was obviously a teenager. Even if she was a witch, she was still a child. Children always needed a transition period to become adults. I'm rude. Let me tell you, that brat is even more rude than me. Rolling his eyes, Dustless stared at Xiao Nan angrily. He knew that this little girl named Ziyuan was a very tiger type. She had all kinds of arrogant attributes. It could be said that she was wild and willful. Xiao Nan ignored Dushless and walked straight behind the gauze curtain. The girl that came into view was quite quiet. Her facial features were beautiful and refined. She was wearing a witch's costume. She was quietly kneeling on the tatami with a serene expression. She gave people the feeling of a blooming lotus, very elegant. Xiao Nan frowned when she saw this. She was obviously a very quiet little girl. How could she be as fierce as Dustless said? The corner of Dustless's mouth twitched fiercely. He was speechless and depressed. The corners of his mouth moved, but he remained silent. Facts speak louder than words. She really didn't look like a spoiled and willful young lady. Ninja of the Rain Village, your work efficiency is very good. Xian's voice was very soft. She raised her eyes to look at Xiao Nan and nodded. Then she looked at Dustless. After a moment of silence, her words almost made Dustless vomit blood. He couldn't wait to slap this little girl to death. You may die, or you may not die. It's really strange. A person like you who is full of bad luck should look like the kind of person who will die early. Xian muttered to herself in surprise. It was the first time that she had seen this kind of fate. It hovered between life and death. It was neither dead nor alive. Ha! Xiao Nan couldn't help but laugh. Her laughter was like a blooming flower, fresh and moving. It was particularly attractive. She didn't care about Dushless, whose face was like a black pot. Her smile was like a beautiful woman, but it gave people a feeling of gloating. Amir Morio wants me to die. Little girl, your idea is too naive and ridiculous. Dustless looked at Xian with a sneer. To be honest, he really didn't care about this bullshit prophecy. It was not that Dushless was conceited. If Morio could really kill him, this world was likely to be ruled by monsters from another world hundreds of years ago. Believe it or not, I have no right to interfere. By the way, if you don't want to die, stay away from me. I have never failed in my prophecy in my life. Dustless frowned slightly when he heard this. It was not that he doubted the authenticity of Xian's words. If the enemy was someone else, they might be able to kill him, but Morio was obviously not on the same level as him. Forget it. I'll take one step at a time. I want to see who he is. Wu Chen thought coldly. A sinister light flashed across his eyes. Dustless only felt that this boring trip suddenly became interesting and lively. It's better to go to the ancestral hall of the swamp country as soon as possible to seal Morio, Xiao Nan said softly. Morio was not an ordinary creature. Since it could be said that he could destroy the world, it might be an exaggeration, but it also showed the fear that Morio gave the world. Let's set off as soon as possible. Dustless nodded in agreement, but his mind had already flown to the horizon. He secretly wondered who in this world could force him to the end of his life. Kagaya Otsutsuki, Sennin Six Paths, and Himura Otsutsuki. These people were obviously impossible. Kagaya Otsutsuki had been sealed, and her 2 sons had died, so it was naturally impossible. Everything was still a mystery. Chapter 220. Conan's calm eyes looked at the situation outside, and her delicate little face revealed a cautious expression. The strength of these undead army may be very ordinary, but their number was extremely huge. The densely packed terracotta army displayed the meaning of the human wave tactic to the extreme. Is there any other way to the land of ghosts? Conan retracted her gaze and stared at Cheyenne's face with a slightly heavy expression. There is a tunnel leading to the outside world where the witch meditates. Cheyenne nodded and said. Everyone knew the principle of preparing for a rainy day. The land of ghosts had long since built a secret escape tunnel in case of an accident. Conan heaved a sigh of relief. These undead army were all undead, puppet-like existences, and there were countless of them. Tunnel. If you don't want to walk on the main road, why do you want to drill a dog hole? A calm voice resounded, and the tone was very dull and natural. Then Wuchen walked out of the main hall, and suddenly a cold gust of wind came out of the main hall, brushing his body. His hair and Akatsuki's clothes were blown up by the wind. Wuchen's figure belonged to the slender type. Now that he was facing the strong wind, coupled with his pale face and messy hair that danced in the wind, he gave people a feeling that he was exceptionally fragile. It was as if he would be annihilated and swallowed by the bone-piercing cold wind at any time. Humph, what a big-tailed wolf, you will cry later, and at that time, won't you have to obediently drill a dog hole? The young girl Cheyenne angrily glared at Dustless, and her small face was full of indignation. The huge project that her ancestors spent decades to build was turned into a dog hole by Dustless, so how could she not be angry? Don't worry about him, he is such a person. Conan looked at Dustless and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She slightly shook her head, and then her eyes shone brightly. She knew Dustless's temperament very well, and she knew that Dustless was not the kind of person who spoke without thinking. If he could do it, he could do it, and he would never talk nonsense. Do you trust him that much? This stinky man has a disgusting salted fish smell all over his body. She glared at Xiao Nan with dissatisfaction. Although Xiao Nan did not show it, Ziyuan could see that Xiao Nan actually trusted Dustless very much. Ziyuan stared at Xiao Nan and seemed to understand something. She muttered in a dissatisfied voice, "It's a pity that such a good cabbage will be eaten by a pig." Even though Ziyuan's voice was very low, Xiao Nan, who was beside her, still heard every word clearly. This child is really as mischievous as Dustless said. The corner of Xiao Nan's mouth twitched uncontrollably. She felt even more conflicted, but she could only smile and let it go. She finally understood that the witch in front of her was a mischievous type. The other party was just a teenage girl. Even if she did it on purpose, she couldn't kill her directly. Dustless seemed to have heard the conversation between Xiao Nan and Ziyuan. He suddenly turned his head, revealing the scarlet eternal kaleidoscope. Gulp. Ziyuan unconsciously swallowed a breath. The moment Dustless turned his head, especially when his crimson eyes swept past her body, she felt as if her soul had collapsed. It was as if she was being stared at by a hungry prehistoric beast. She couldn't help but have goosebumps all over her body. A mere puppet wants to shake the world. A half-baked like you wants to rule the world and establish a 1,000-year-old empire. There is nothing more ridiculous than this. Dustless calmly stared at the terracotta soldiers coming from all directions. The contempt in his eyes was obvious, and the momentum of his whole body began to soar. The scarlet eternal kaleidoscope shot out an unparalleled fluctuation of eye power. Is it an illusion? The violent eye power made Xiao Nan's voice stop. It was as if she had come to a world of illusion. The world in her eyes was invisibly covered with red clouds, looming and surrounded by a faint blood mist. It was impossible to touch. The whole world was shrouded in this ominous blood light. In the haze, the golden luster passed through the heavy blood mist. It was particularly dazzling, and it pulled Xiao Nan, who was immersed in it, out of it. It's so big. Ziyuan looked at the golden giant outside the palace in astonishment. She wiped the saliva from the corner of her mouth with her small hand. The huge body, which was dozens of meters tall, almost covered the entire sky. The golden afterglow sprinkled all over the void, and the dark night was like day. Looking up, it was Dustless's ultimate body, Kensusunu. The huge golden giant was wearing a heavy samurai suit. It had 2 heads and 4 arms. There were 2 golden long swords at its waist, and it was wearing a ferocious Tengu armor. Its crimson eyes were full of evil, and its momentum was unusually ferocious. It made people unable to raise the heart to resist. As long as it glanced at you, you would feel as if there was a knife on your back. It's much bigger than a few years ago. Recalling the golden giant when she fought with Dustless a few years ago, Xiao Nan thought to herself. There was an obvious difference between the Kensusunu in front of her and the one in the past. Clang! An ear-piercing roar sounded, and the endless void was invisibly covered with a layer of dark clouds. Looking up, Kensusunu suddenly pulled out the tachi hanging at its waist. The straight tachi covered the earth like a guillotine. I'm afraid you'll have to rebuild the palace. Xiao Nan looked at the tachi in the hands of the ultimate body, Kensusunu, speechless. She had seen Kensusunu before, so she understood the horror of Kensusunu. It didn't take much strength. It only needed a light slash, and the palace of the country of ghosts would completely collapse. She was afraid that the amount of money from this mission might not be enough to compensate the country of ghosts. It was not impossible for them to pay for it. Is it that exaggerated? Ziyuan curled her lips in disdain. Although this giant was extraordinary and frighteningly big, the palace of the country of ghosts covered a vast area. All of you, disappear. With a ferocious roar, the ultimate form Susanu's katana of light slashed down, and the tip of the katana suddenly blasted out an incomparably thick wave of destruction. The tyrannical force that could destroy all things was like crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood. The solid and hard ground seemed to be torn apart by bare hands, and the narrow and long cracks extended to the scale of tens of kilometers. The sand dunes in the distance collapsed and exploded. The scattered dust fell to the ground like fine snow. Thousands of undead soldiers, including the palace of the country of ghosts, were all buried under the light of the ultimate body Kensusanu's tachi of light. Chapter 221. Both Ziyuan and Xiao Nan stared at the long and narrow crack with their mouths agape. The hideous wound was exposed to the air and would never disappear. It was not an exaggeration to say that the ditch on the ground, which was dozens of kilometers long, was the masterpiece of God. It's an honor for you puppets to be destroyed by Kensusunu. Seeing that all the terracotta figures had been cleared, Dustless removed Kensusunu, which was dozens of meters high, and landed directly beside Xiao Nan and Ziyuan. You bastard, are you here to protect me or to seize the country of ghosts? Glaring at Dustless angrily, Ziyuan's face was livid, and she almost spat out fire. Looking around, the palace of the country of ghosts, which had countless years of history, was flattened by Dustless with a single strike. This was simply murdering for money and trying to seize the country of ghosts. Idiot, even if I didn't destroy these buildings, those puppets would still destroy them mercilessly. Glancing at Ziyuan with pity, Dustless said mercilessly. This was an undeniable fact. Acheron had a deep-rooted hatred for the country of ghosts. He would definitely order his puppets to completely trample the country of ghosts to the ground. You mean to say that it's better for you to take advantage of them? Ziyuan instantly understood what Dustless meant. She was so angry that she laughed and asked. She wanted to beat Dustless's calm face into a pig's head. The meaning shown on his face was obviously saying that what he had just done was not worth mentioning. This is the truth. Glancing at Ziyuan expressionlessly, Dustless was too lazy to talk nonsense and walked straight out of the palace. It was well known that Acheron was ruthless. This little girl named Ziyuan obviously knew what he meant. She was just pestering him endlessly. Watching Dustless's back gradually disappear, Xiaonan pulled Ziyuan and followed him. He's right, Ziyuan. As if afraid that Ziyuan would be sad, Xiaonan comforted her softly. After all, she was still a little girl. It was inevitable that it would be difficult for her to accept the destruction of the home she had lived in for more than 10 years. I'm not as weak as you think. I just don't like that guy. Ziyuan was not an insensible person. In fact, as Dustless said, even if they left like this, Wang Quan would not let the land of ghosts go unscathed. Everything in the palace would be ruthlessly destroyed by him. That would be best. Hearing this, Xiaonan nodded slightly. She pulled Ziyuan and also disappeared into the dark night sky, leaving only the straight crack that stretched for dozens of kilometers. The next morning, the morning breeze blew and the sun shone brightly. The three figures leisurely shuttled through the dense forest, strolling and enjoying the fresh morning air. Their expressions were quite leisurely, as if they were leisurely taking a stroll after breakfast. Is this really okay? We're doing a Super S mission. Seeing that Dustless and Ziyuan were so lazy, Xiaonan spoke uneasily and reminded them of the current level of the mission. Last night, Ziyuan had complained that she wanted to sleep. Xiaonan had hoped that Dustless would scare this unruly little girl. Unexpectedly, Dustless agreed unexpectedly. Moreover, he was the one who wanted to sleep the most. In fact, several groups of invaders had been secretly dealt with by Dustless last night. Xiaonan and Ziyuan had not found out. There's no need to care about Xiaonan. The destination is close at hand. Staring at the cave in the distance, Dustless's thoughts were running fast. He could even feel the mysterious creatures in the cave, and he could clearly sense the violent and evil negative emotions on them. The evil concentration of this chakra is not weaker than that of the tailed beasts, but there is an essential difference. These monsters of different worlds don't seem to be from this world. Perceiving the difference between chakra and chakra, Dustless frowned. In recent years, he had been dealing with tailed beasts every day, so he naturally knew the details of tailed beasts. After all, the chakra of tailed beasts came from the Jubi, including the huge chakra in Dustless's body. The origin of this beast is different. His chakra seems to have nothing to do with the Jubi. With a strong light in his eyes, Dustless's breathing was a little excited. He originally thought that the so-called Wangliang was just a collection of human negative emotions, but now it seems that he was thinking too much. Maybe there will be an unexpected harvest. With a smile on his face, Dustless's eyes lit up. He didn't know how old the Wangliang was. The monster that existed countless years ago definitely knew some unknown ancient secret history. I can use Rinnegan to extract his memory. After making a decision in his heart, Dustless's eyes lit up. Caw caw caw, the sound of the ground breaking suddenly sounded, and the dust under their feet immediately floated into the air, dragging Dustless and others straight into the cave ahead. This guy's ability is really strange. It seems to be similar to Pain's gravity control. Conan said to herself incredulously, staring at the ground under her feet. She couldn't help but take a deep breath. This was the first time she saw Dustless use gravity. Why didn't you say earlier that you can fly? Ziyuan stared at Dustless in front of her, and she was particularly depressed. She was not a ninja, so naturally, she couldn't stand such a long journey. Although she had received a lot of training as a Miko, she still couldn't bear it and was physically and mentally exhausted. Caw caw caw, the ground collapsed, and countless terracotta figures poured out of the ground in a neat arrangement. They held sharp swords in their hands, expressionless, and walked in neat steps. Every time they walked, the ground would tremble. The violent tremor spread to the distance, and the whole earth would tremble slightly. The momentum was shocking. Although these terracotta figures belong to the small hill, their number is frightening. Ninjas are easy to deal with, but they are indeed natural enemies for weak human beings. Dustless nodded secretly. With such an army, it was not difficult to conquer the world. Conan looked at the terracotta army below with a blank face, and there were traces of wrinkles on her body, and the number of explosive charms was far denser than the terracotta figures. Her beautiful eyes narrowed slightly, and Conan also showed her ferocious side as a woman. Holy origami technique. Chapter 222. The explosive charms all over the sky slowly descended, as light and powerless as snow, drifting into the distance with the wind, covering all the terracotta figures on the ground. You are really cold and ruthless, Conan. Dustless took a deep breath and looked at Conan speechlessly. He couldn't help but have goosebumps all over his body. He suddenly thought of Yuro Otsutsuki. Some women were usually gentle and soft, but once they became fierce, boom, 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 endless explosions suddenly rang out, and the power of countless explosive charms connected to each other was enough to destroy the world. The surging hot air waves directly swallowed the world. This crazy woman. The corner of Dustless's mouth twitched fiercely, and he quickly released the local Kansusunu to protect the mobile platform under his feet to defend against the impact of the air waves below. Bang, bang, bang. Even though he activated the local Kansusunu to defend himself, Dustless and the other two were still swallowed by the shock wave. Even the local Kansusunu showed some slight traces. Fortunately, Dustless repaired it in time. Otherwise, it might also be swallowed by the explosive charms. Even under the protection of the local Kansusunu, the strong vibration still made Dustless and the others feel dizzy, and their minds kept roaring. The terrifying explosion lasted for a few minutes before it stopped. The ground below was even more tragic. The dense terracotta figures were erased, and the earth was torn in half by the brutal force. The moist soil deep underground was brutally turned up and exposed to the erosion of the sun. All the materials within several kilometers were annihilated. Looking down from the sky, what came into view was an unprecedented huge pit, as if it had been hit by the Super Shinra Tensei head-on, and everything in the world was destroyed. Do you want to kill us all? Looking at Conan angrily, Dustless said with dissatisfaction, if it weren't for Kansusunu, maybe we would have been killed by you, Conan. Yes, you have to take responsibility. Ziyuan, who didn't get along with Dustless, was also very resentful. She was the weakest among the three of them. When she was swallowed by the airwave just now, she swayed around like a roly-poly toy. So that's where the Wangliang is. It really does feel like a tailed beast. Ignoring Ziyuan, who was about to complain, Xiao Nan looked straight at the entrance of the cave in front of her. A faint ripple appeared in her eyes, and Xiao Nan was a little surprised. The lava cave where the Wangliang was sealed was also very strange. It seemed to be protected by some kind of special energy. Even when it was hit by the explosive talisman, it was still safe and sound. You'll know if it's a mule or a horse when it comes out for a walk. Dustless chuckled. At the same time, he controlled the floating platform to land on the ground. After exchanging glances, the three of them jumped down and walked straight into the eerie interior of the cave. In the depths of the pitch-black darkness, one could not even see one's own fingers. It was filled with oppression and fear. Ziyuan seemed to have never seen such a terrifying environment before. She seemed to have heard the screams of ghosts. Fear and hesitation appeared in her eyes, and her footsteps stopped. "Don't be afraid. The Wangliang is sealed." Dustless gave Ziyuan an encouraging look and said softly. There was a rare gentleness in his tone. Right now, Ziyuan was just a little girl in her teens. It was normal for her to be afraid. Xiao Nan also patted Ziyuan on the shoulder, indicating that she didn't need to worry. The Wangliang was at most at the same level as a tailed beast. Although its ability was strange and evil, it wouldn't cause any trouble for her and Dustless. Ziyuan nodded obediently and followed. As they went deeper and deeper, the temperature gradually increased. It was as hot as hell, making it difficult for them to adapt. Fortunately, Dustless and Xiao Nan were not mortals. Although Ziyuan was a little ordinary, she was also a witch who had received a lot of training. She could still resist this kind of heat. Soon, the Crimson World came into view. The environment in the cave was quite spacious. The lava was scattered everywhere, and the crimson light could melt and erode any substance. If one fell in, they would definitely die. Looking up, they could clearly see the middle-aged man with black runes on his face. Boom! 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 At this moment, the ground outside the cave shook, and the range continued to expand. The dense undead army once again emerged from the ground like ghosts. "Leave it to me." Frowning slightly, Dustless, who noticed the unusual vibration outside the cave, looked at Xiao Nan and signaled her to block the undead army outside. Then he grabbed Ziyuan's small arm and in the blink of an eye, they crossed the layers of lava and landed in front of Yomi. Seeing this, Xiao Nan also left and went out to fight the terracotta army composed of puppets. The strength of this ninja seems to be strong. Just now, I couldn't catch his movement trajectory. Is it a rare space ninja? Yomi's frown disappeared in a flash. Staring at the indifferent face of Dustless, he suddenly became alert. This man gave him the feeling of a ferocious beast hiding in the deep sea, unfathomable. The evil energy fluctuation seems to be similar to that of Morio, but there is obviously a dimensional gap. I'm afraid it's just a possessed puppet. In that case, let's let your body come out to breathe first, and then extract your memory. The cold light in his eyes disappeared in a flash. Dustless suddenly made a decision in his heart. He closed his eyes and left the rest to the little girl Ziyuan. Your courage is not small, even your current Maitreya doesn't dare to approach me like this. The new generation replaces the old. Staring gloomily at Ziyuan, who was 80% similar to Maitreya, Yomi praised in a hoarse voice. He seemed to appreciate Ziyuan's courage. A mere insect dares to boast shamelessly, ridiculous. Raising his eyelids and revealing a sarcastic smile, Dustless said disdainfully in his heart. He looked indifferently at Yomi or Morio who possessed him. It seems that he still hasn't figured out who is the hunter. I'm going to seal you now. Ziyuan was obviously too lazy to talk nonsense with him. She made a hand gesture that had never been seen before. After completing the hand gesture, the ground suddenly shone with a purple luster. A square-shaped enchantment enveloped Wang Quan, Wang Liang, Wu Qin, and Ziyuan, completely sealing them. As if seeing the end of Dustless and Ziyuan, Morio's rampant voice resounded in the cave. Chapter 223. As the square enchantment surged up, purple-black evil chakra suddenly rushed out from Netherworld's body. The density was completely different from before. Kiki. Kiki. You are about to be crushed to death by fate. I will devour you both later. Eerie and terrifying laughter came from Netherworld's body. An extremely thick black beam of light erupted from the top of his head. It felt like the evil wanted to devour everything. Even Dustless frowned, and his heart was full of doubts and puzzlement. This guy must have a strong background. Dustless's pupils shot out a sharp light. His eyes were locked on the purple mist, and at the same time, he raised his hand and shot out a golden beam of light. Laser. The straight beam of light pierced through the black mist and went straight through it. However, this strange black mist seemed to be elemental and was directly immune to Dustless's attack. The square purple enchantment left a burning mark. Kiki, a gloomy and sarcastic voice came out from the black mist. At the same time, Netherworld's body seemed to be melting. The skin on his body began to peel off like a wrinkled paper. With a gentle pull, the surface layer of his skin would be peeled off. How is this possible? It's not sealing you, Ziyuan looked at the black mist in horror. Her whole body was cold. The power in front of her did not look like Wang Liang's seal at all. Instead, Wang Liang, who was covered in evil chakra, was completely liberated. You don't have to be so surprised, is it strange? In fact, we have the same physical body. To some extent, the so-called seal is to reunite the two into one. As for consciousness, of course, it is the person who occupies the dominant position in the body. What determines all of this is naturally the amount of chakra, Wang Liang said in a gloomy tone. Every time he said a word, the black mist became stronger and more stable. The frightened Ziyuan instinctively ran to Dustless's side. She hugged Dustless with both hands, and tears appeared in her eyes. Obviously, she also knew that she had released Wang Liang, and he wanted to devour her. Even if Ziyuan's chakra is not as good as yours, a worm like you can forget about occupying her body. Dustless said expressionlessly as he calmly looked at the black ball of light. His calm voice was exceptionally confident, causing Ziyuan's restless heart to slowly calm down. She stared at Dustless with her watery eyes. She had never felt that the man in front of her could be so reliable. She hugged Dustless more tightly. On the other hand, the corners of Dustless's mouth curled up as he sneered at the ball of black light. His calm face suddenly twisted, and his deep eyes shot out a vicious aura. Dustless's murderous aura spread out like a tide, directly bursting the purple square barrier. He said coldly, "Instead, I see you being torn into pieces. Brat, you're courting death." Wang Liang was enraged when he heard this. Even the black mass was trembling with anger. The strong all had their own pride. Now that he was being treated like an ant by a nobody, how could he not be angry? Caw caw caw, the solid ground suddenly burst open, and several purple tentacles rose from the ground. Their ferocious fangs tore at Dustless, and their scarlet eyes were extremely ferocious. Boring. Raising his eyelids, Dustless stared at the ferocious mouth without fear. His thin body shone with a dazzling brilliance. His whole body was swallowed by the golden light, and immediately, a straight ray of light shot straight up. A warm luster flashed from Dustless's palm, covering an extremely wide area, almost covering the entire cave. Wang Liang has broken the seal, so there is no need for this cave to exist. His pupils slowly shrank, and the gaze that shot out was particularly cold. He looked at the purple-black monster in the depths of the ground and mercilessly sentenced Wang Liang to death, sending him to the 18th level of hell. The coldness in the cave penetrated deep into the bone marrow and did not dissipate for a long time. This is the place of your new life, and also the place of your death. It is really suitable. Yasukani no Magatama. The brilliance in the palm of his hand was thrown out, and like raindrops, it burst open and turned into millions of rays of light whizzing down. The dense number of rays of light filled the dark void, and the dark interior of the cave was dyed golden. Pucci. Pucci, the monster in the depths of the ground that was about to raise its head was directly ruthlessly suppressed. The force formed by the golden light was like a scythe that easily killed these snake-like monsters. Caw caw caw, the cave could not withstand the attack of the light bomb, and began to collapse rapidly. Large and small rocks were quickly peeled off, obviously unable to withstand the force just now, and the entire cave began to collapse. Shinra Tensei. The repulsion force broke out, and the falling rocks were bounced away. Dustless's gaze was deep, and seeing that the entrance of the cave was completely blocked, chakra began to go berserk. Silver will reincarnation explosion. Boom boom boom. In the blink of an eye, the enormous Longwan Feng crushed the cave and razed it to the ground. If it was said that Wu Chen was just fooling around before, now it was completely serious. The huge mountain was instantly destroyed, and the immortal's cave that had not seen the light of day all year round was exposed to the sunlight. You are quite shameless. Holding Cheyenne in the void, Dustless spread out his perception in all directions. He noticed that the Morio was not dead yet, and frowned slightly. He subconsciously looked at the purple pearl on Cheyenne's body. It seemed that only by combining the power of the two could the Morio be killed. It's good that you are not dead, as long as I can extract your memory to find out the answer I want to know. With a cold smile on his face, Dustless secretly decided, and at the same time, he used gravity to safely send Cheyenne to the ground. This little girl was also smart. She knew that if she stayed with Dustless, she would be a hindrance, so she quickly fled into the distance. Ao ao ao, the angry roar resounded through the sky, and the evil black chakra soared into the sky. The hysterical voice was full of endless killing intent and madness. There was no doubt that Dustless's series of attacks just now must have hurt him. It seems that you are still not convinced. The contemptuous smile became more obvious. Dustless's pupils rapidly turned, and the surging and abnormally powerful eye power shot out. His dark red eyes stared at the huge body of the Morio, and a faint black flame flashed in his eyes. Amaterasu. Chapter 224. His purple-black body was covered in blazing flames, and the dark Amaterasu was like a flame from hell, and the moment it appeared, it swallowed Morio's entire body. Morio shook his body vigorously, and the dark chakra surged all over his body, and the surface of his skin accumulated a chakra defense wall, trying to reduce the erosion of his body by the Amaterasu. However, the pain seemed to be alleviated, and the cries of pain also stopped. Treating the symptoms but not the root cause, temporarily relieving the pain will still be swallowed. Quietly looking at the dark chakra on the surface of Morio's skin, Dustless sneered. Even so, the Amaterasu was still crazily swallowing the dark chakra, and Morio was constantly releasing chakra to resist, and the result was self-evident. Looking at Dustless in the sky with his blood-red eyes, Morio suggested in a hoarse voice, "Human, why don't we join forces? If we form an alliance, the whole world will be easy for us." Suppressing the anger and monstrous killing intent in his heart, Morio chose to compromise. As long as there is life, there is hope. This truth was not only understood by humans, but he also understood it, and even understood it better than humans. Temporary submission may allow him to turn the situation around, but resistance now will only lead to death, and the first one to consume the chakra will be himself. This tentacle monster also knows how to be flexible. Staring at Morio being swallowed by the Amaterasu, Dustless was quite surprised. Morio in front of him was much more cunning than the tailed beast, and he knew how to surrender to reality. But the will of the incarnation of resentment. You are not qualified to cooperate with me, and now you are just a fish on the chopping board, and I am the one who is about to slaughter you. Ridiculing Morio with disdain, Dustless said straightforwardly. It is not impossible to cooperate with him, but at least Uchiha Madara is powerful, or someone who is valuable to him. Morio in front of him does not meet this condition. Are you sure? I can tell you some secrets of the ancient times. Morio's voice was low, and there was endless temptation in his tone, and people with a slightly weak will may be addicted to it and be played by Morio. Don't doubt what I said. I am an ancient existence who has lived in the world for countless years, the incarnation of the root of all evil human beings. As long as the evil thoughts of human beings don't stop, I will exist forever. Morio was afraid of Dustless's suspicion. He answered truthfully, trying to increase his bargaining chip, and his tone triumphant. As long as negative emotions such as resentment and hatred exist, he will not die. Eternal and indestructible. You really dare to say that? The sneer at the corner of Wuchen's mouth was even more obvious. He still remembered that even if he didn't suddenly appear and disturb the situation, Morio would be killed by the fusion of Uzumaki Naruto and Cheyenne Yuan in the future. It was ridiculous to say that he was immortal. Morio, Dustless Morio's voice, Morio, and Morio, resolutely rejecting Morio's cooperation. Dustless sneered, this guy obviously belongs to the Cunning Hill, and cooperating with such a monster is boring and unnecessary, and the effect is minimal. In that case, then go to hell, stupid human being who doesn't know what's good for you. It seems that Dustless will refuse his proposal. Morio directly attacked. The tentacles hidden in the dark opened their sharp mouths full of fangs, and sprayed a black mist, attacking Dustless from all directions. Boring. No matter how you attack, the gap between the two sides is difficult to make up for. Dustless looked at the beasts attacking from all directions without fear, and the cold light condensed in his eyes, and the cold killing intent turned into a majestic repulsive force, scattering in all directions. Shinra Tensei. The irresistible repulsive wave spread out, and the void stirred up waves of ripples, swallowing the tentacles that came to bite, and simply disappeared. Ao. At the same time, Morio's angry roar pulled Dustless's attention back, and saw that its big mouth was burning with a black evil light, jumping with a dark luster, like a Baijidama, filled with a strong sense of destruction. His gaze fell on the ground under Morio's feet, and his pupils flashed with a hint of ridicule. Mokutan, with a strong vitality, chakra surged in Dustless's body, and the ground under Morio's feet suddenly burst open, and countless thick trees like pipes inserted into his body, crazily swallowing the boundless chakra in Morio's body. Perhaps because Morio's chakra was too evil, the Mokutan that swallowed him was dyed black, and even the surface of the trees was covered with disgusting black water droplets. My chakra. Don't absorb my chakra. Morio suddenly panicked when he realized that the Mokutan had penetrated deep into his body and was swallowing his chakra without limit, and his tone was filled with the intention of begging for mercy. However, Dustless's face was cold, and he directly ignored him. At the same time, due to the absorption of chakra by the Mokutan, Morio's chakra rapidly decreased, and the Amaterasu that was previously blocked by chakra suddenly swallowed him up, and suddenly, a miserable scream came out from his huge mouth that was full of fangs. The hysterical scream resounded through the sky, and the horrifying scream made people retreat, not daring to get close. As time slowly passed, Morio's scream became softer and softer, and his huge body was also swallowed up by the Amaterasu, leaving only a small body, and then it turned back into the appearance of Nether, and was dying. Of course, this was the result of Dustless deliberately leaving a backup plan. I'm going to take away your memory now, idiot. With a smile, he landed beside Morio, and his left eye suddenly turned into the reincarnation Sharingan. He grabbed Morio's head with one hand, and from the palm of his hand came out, and entered Morio's mind to search his memory. This guy is really an antique. Narrowing his eyes, Dustless carefully went through the memories in Morio's mind, and shockingly found out that Morio's history could be traced back to thousands of years ago, and even when Kagaya released the infinite Tsukuyomi to bring the whole world into the world of nightmares, this old man was still alive, and he used some unknown method to live a carefree life. Chapter 225. A huge amount of information poured into his mind. Dustless was like a hungry and thirsty baby, greedily reading Morio's thousands of years of memory, but what made him speechless was that this old guy who had done all kinds of bad things did almost all kinds of evil things. How is this possible? How can there be such a monster in the world? After a while, Dustless seemed to have read some shocking memory. His pupils suddenly opened, shooting out a horrified light, and for the first time in more than 10 years, he panicked. Are you kidding me? One person of this level is enough. How can there be two of them? The corner of his mouth twitched fiercely. Dustless cursed without caring about his image, and couldn't help but worry about his future. Through Morio's memory, Dustless saw the era of Otsutsuki Kagaya and the reason why she created the White Zetsu army. There is someone who can confront that old witch head-on. Is this the plot? Dustless, who recovered from the sluggish state, was speechless. His head was full of black lines, and he was faintly sweating. The old witch in the mouth was naturally Kagaya. Through Morio's memory, Dustless was surprised to find that there was someone at the same level as Kagaya in the world. It seems that she is also a mysterious woman, and she doesn't seem to belong to this world, but from another world. What makes Dustless most unacceptable is that in the confrontation between the mysterious woman and Kagaya, she still has the upper hand. Even Otsutsuki Kagaya is afraid of this enemy, so she created a large number of white Zetsu to prepare for war, turning all the humans in the world into her own soldiers. It seems that she is planning to make a final struggle. However, with the seal of her two sons, the war also stopped. Otsutsuki Himura and Otsutsuki Hagoromo unlocked the infinite Tsukuyomi, and the world returned to peace again. As for Kagaya's enemy, she has never appeared since then, as if she evaporated into thin air. As for whether she turned into dust with the passage of time, only God knows. Before the first wave has subsided, another wave rises. Dustless sighed with melancholy. The matter of Jubi hasn't been settled, and a mysterious woman who is even stronger than Kagaya has appeared, which really makes him a little confused. Humans were sentimental creatures who were always vigilant in times of peace. It was fine if they didn't know the reason, but once they found out about some unknown secret, they would inevitably become active and suspicious. Dustless in front of him, even if his strength is unprecedented, the most basic human feelings can't be completely abandoned. Perhaps it is because these feelings can't be cut off. Humans are called humans. After a long while, after looking at the Wangliang with pity, Wu Chen's palm emitted a black flame and swallowed the Wangliang in the blink of an eye. The Wangliang that had dominated the world for countless years in the past finally disappeared completely. His pupils rotated, and Dustless eyes turned into dark eyeballs, returning to the normal human form. But this is really interesting, the enemy of Chakra Ancestor. I'm really looking forward to it. His eyes looked at the void in front of him indifferently, and his sharp eyes pointed straight to the depths of the void, the corners of his mouth slightly raised, and his ink-black pupils were shining. I don't care what kind of enemy Kagaya is afraid of, the life and death of the world has nothing to do with me. After thinking about it, Dustless's heart suddenly became clear, and his tense nerves also relaxed. He is not a generous person like Uzumaki Naruto. Even if all the people in this world die, it has nothing to do with him. As long as the people close to him are safe, even if the world is immediately destroyed, Dustless won't take a second look. As for Huiji and her enemy, Dustless wouldn't interfere. It would be best if both sides were injured so that he could reap the benefits of the third party. But even so, Wu Chen also realized that he was powerless. Whether it was Hui or the woman he was afraid of, they were all peerless geniuses who could destroy the sky with a snap of their fingers. It would be better if he didn't compare himself to them. Once he did, Wu Chen was the weakest one. It seems that Shien's life and death prophecy is referring to the future. Frowning deeply, Dustless secretly said. Shien's life and death prophecy is always lingering in his mind, but according to the current situation, it is likely to be sometime in the future, at least not now. In other words, at some time in the future, Dustless will have the biggest experience in his life. If he wins, he will live, and if he loses, he will die. Has it been completely solved? While Dustless was pondering, Conan fell from the sky with Cheyenne in her arms. The undead army that had just fought with her suddenly collapsed and turned into ordinary dust. The aura of Morio also disappeared. There is no doubt that this old monster of countless years has finally fallen. It's time to go back. Dustless nodded. Of course, he didn't tell Conan about the memories he plundered from Morio's mind. At the same time, he also took Cheyenne away according to the task given by Pain. Now that Morio in the land of demons has disappeared fundamentally, there is no need for the Miko to exist, not to mention the mysterious woman that Kaguya is afraid of. Conan doesn't even know who Kaguya is. Time flies, and in the blink of an eye, 2 years have passed. Hearing the news from Zetsu's mouth, Uzumaki Naruto, who has been practicing with Jiraiya for 2 years, returned to Konoha's ninja village. It means that the magnificent era has finally arrived. Just a few days ago, Pain suddenly became anxious about the gathering of the Akatsuki organization. The content was as Dustless guessed. It was a plan to catch the bijou. In addition to the Jinchuriki of each village, most of the bijou are inside the Akatsuki organization. The outside world currently only has Cloud Village's Nibi Jinchuriki, Sand Village's Ichibi Jinchuriki, and Konoha Village's Kyubi. Of course, no one knows that the Kyubi-Zen attribute chakra is in the hands of Uchiha Obito. Once the turnover, plus the temptation of the 2 masked men, Pain finally couldn't hold back his ambition and plan to attack the Ichibi. Because 6 of the 9 bijou are already in the hands of the Akatsuki organization, there is no need to keep a low profile. Chapter 226. Land of Wind, Sand Hidden Village. The Sand Hidden Village is located in the desert area. Not to mention the shortage of all kinds of materials, the climate is surprisingly bad. The cold wind whistling through the ground blows sand and stones, and the flowing air is full of particles. Even when breathing through the nostrils, sand can enter the village. The Sand Village and the Rock Village are quite similar, they are both in the middle of nowhere. 3 black shadows stood in the sandstorm. They were all dressed in black trench coats embroidered with red clouds. They were naturally Dead Ale and Scorpion of the Red Sand. The figure outside was naturally Dustless. Although the 5 major countries are now completely together, they have a lot of private contacts. It's inevitable that someone will suddenly jump out and disturb the mission. Therefore, Pain sent Dustless to support them. The one who complained before was naturally Dead Ale. This kid's relationship with Sasori of the Red Sand had eased, but it was still not easy to deal with. The 2 art masters were still criticizing each other's artistic attainments. It's been a long time. Sasori, who was hiding in the puppet, looked at the village in the distance, and his footsteps suddenly stopped, and his tone was a little complicated. There's no need to feel emotional about the village that is about to become a thing of the past, Sasori. Glancing back at Sasori, Dustless walked straight to the village in front of him. He knew that Sasori still had feelings for the sand-hidden village. Staring at Dustless's thin figure gradually disappearing in the sandstorm, Deidara and Sasori also followed. Since the Third Shinobi World War, the sand-hidden village's strength has been completely annihilated by Dustless. Now, after so many years of recuperation, their strength is not much different from before. The only loss is the death of the Yondaime Kazakage in the Chunin exam, causing the sand-hidden village to lose high-end combat power. Now, only Gaara, the Jinchuriki, can replace him. My art will definitely be the most reasonable and perfect interpretation in this rotten and barren village. Deidara stared at the village in front of him with shining eyes. He raised his arms with great momentum, and his eyes were tightly locked on Dustless in front of him. There was a faint sense of eagerness in his eyes. Foolish, do you want to challenge that man? I'm sorry to tell you that you're still far from it. Seeing Deidara looking at Dustless's back, how could Sasori let go of this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity? He mocked and ridiculed Deidara. At the same time, he secretly scolded Deidara for being an idiot. Uchiha Itachi could defeat you in an instant, but he still wanted to challenge Uchiha Dustless. He was really hopeless. Shaking his head, Sasori knew that Deidara would probably be shrouded in the shadow of Sharingan for the rest of his life. A new generation replaces the old. Uchiha Dustless is just an old antique from the previous era. Sooner or later, he will be replaced by me, a rising star, and that includes you, Sasori-san. Deidara said confidently. He is an eagle flying in the sky, and the Uchiha clan is just a local snake that plays with genjutsu. Over the years, he has been training his eyes to resist genjutsu so that one day he can regain his dignity. Foolish, do you think that what you saw in the rock village was the full strength of this man? You're really a kid who will never grow up, Deidara. Sasori sneered and looked at Deidara hopelessly. The strongest in the Akatsuki was not Yahiko or Uchiha Itachi, but the lonely figure buried in the sand in front of him. In fact, I also want to challenge him, but unfortunately, the gap between us is dimensional, not strength. I'm afraid that I won't be able to catch up with him in a lifetime. I advise you to save it, Deidara. Sasori looked at Deidara with pity and said very rationally. Deidara rolled his eyes and directly ignored Scorpio. Seeing this, Sasori couldn't help but shake his head. If Deidara said that it would be difficult to defeat Itachi, it's not impossible as long as he works hard. Challenging a deep-sea behemoth like Uchiha Wuchin is absolutely asking for trouble. The situation doesn't seem right. Dustless's body suddenly stopped, and he stared at the village in front of him. His eyes narrowed slightly, and the whistling sand stopped flowing around Dustless. The Sand Village is also one of the 5 great shinobi villages, but there is no guard at the entrance of the Sand Village. It's incredible that there is no guard at the entrance of the Sand Village. As he bowed his head and pondered, Sasori and Deidara also followed closely behind. I'm afraid they were all cleaned up by the spies I arranged before. Sasori, who caught up, said proudly. When he came to the Sand Village, he informed his former subordinates that the guards outside the Sand Village have been cleaned up. Good job, Sasori. Dustless said softly, casting an appreciative look at Sasori, and immediately walked straight forward. Sasori is a smart person who plans ahead, and he can look at the future development with a long-term vision. He has spies around Orochimaru, the Sand Village also has spies, and maybe other villages also have spies. Looking at Dustless who had left in advance, Deidara curled his lips and was particularly depressed. He felt that his limelight and lines had been completely snatched by Dustless. He, who was good at acting, had become the audience instead. Don't think that the Sand Village is easy to deal with. If it's not small, it will definitely capsize. Taking a glance at Deidara, Sasori said seriously. None of the 5 great shinobi villages are ordinary targets. Time passed quickly, and in the blink of an eye, Dustless, Sasori, and Deidara passed through the high pile of sand obstacles and looked down at the huge village in front of them. Looking down, the defense of the village was quite loose, and the people passing by were very natural, and they couldn't see any conspiracy. It's not a big deal, it's just a Ichibi, let me deal with it. Deidara made a giant white bird and flew straight into the sky. Is that a barrier? His pupils slightly locked, revealing the scarlet 3-tomo Sharingan, and the transparent invisible barrier was clearly exposed in front of him. It seems that we fell into a trap. Glancing sideways at the familiar figures, Wu Chen's tone was as calm as autumn water. You're tuning in to the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.